O nations and Babel. We're studying the book of Genesis, and this week we find ourselves just after the flood. From Noah, his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their families to the beginning of the new human civilizations. We look at a few key interesting points that affect things down the chain. The lesson looks at Noah's drinking experience, his son's reaction and the consequences for it. It also looks at genealogy in Genesis and why is it important, and then the Babel operation, analyzing the attempt to build the Tower of Babel. Did I mention how I love the parallels that Jacques Ducan finds in the text? Looking at Noah after the flood in his vineyard in reference to Adam in the Garden of Eden. Both ate the fruit and resulted in nakedness, then a covering, a curse, and a blessing. Indulging in certain things can have serious consequences, like losing self-control as Noah did. Ham saw his father, but the important part is what he did about it. He didn't think to help, to protect, to take care. He disrespected. And this is not just about good and bad manners. This is about some fundamental setups. Respect for our parents and past influences our future. Ham was the father of Canaan, and this introduces the concept of the promised land. Canaan will bear the curse of his father's actions and will be subdued so that God's people in the descendants of Shem may enter the promised land and prepare the way for the Messiah who will enlarge Japheth and in the tents of Shem. This is a prophetic message pointing to the opening of the gospel to the Gentiles and the entire world from there. Who cares about genealogy and why so much boring details in Genesis? Well, these were real people with families, relationships, continuity. Noah's father and Adam were actually both alive in a time span of 56 years or so. They knew each other. Can you imagine these relationships? The stories that were passed on? And now here is the link between pre and post-flood eras. As humanity, we carry and pass our history, our achievements, and baggage. When you immerse yourself in these relationships, things become more real to you and you can relate better to them. From Noah's sons, we can see the formation of the nations of the entire world. This is fascinating. 70 nations that we can see symbolically and prophetically represented in God's chosen nation through the 70 members of the family of Jacob going to Egypt, through the 70 elders of Israel in the wilderness, the 70 disciples that Jesus sends out. There is this understanding and feel of wholeness. There is nothing random for God. He has committed to get us all out from this mess of sin, all of us who are open for it, and you get this conviction even more enforced when you see all these details in the genealogy and development in history. Now, when people get together, they will always come to some crazy idea. It's amazing how united we can be when it's against someone else. And in this case, humanity gathered in a place called Shinar to do something big. They want to make a name for themselves and they want to protect themselves in case God gets another crazy idea for flood. Isn't this amazing? We are descendants of survivors who received special grace and protection from God. And instead of building the relationship that can keep us safe and help us avoid getting in direction and path of destruction, we will choose to take things into our own hands and go against our only hope for real protection. And unfortunately, this is what we do. This is what sin engraved in us, and it nurtures in us a revolt against God. From the Tower of Babel, we see references to the same place in the book of Daniel, in Babylon, through the spiritual Babylon, in Revelation, and at the end, the nations are all gathering against God as well. It's a full cycle driven by the same ambition rooted in the core revolt against God. And this is sin. So, while people were trying to build something to help them reach up above, we see the irony and vanity of the effort when God says, okay, let's go down to see these guys. Things were turning so bad so quickly, but one trick from God created a detour for sin and provided time for hope. God confused their languages, and suddenly all the unity disappeared. It doesn't take much from God to demonstrate how vain our efforts are when they are deprived from His blessing. So, #LessonInOne. Here is what I will remember from this lesson. Things have consequences. Caring and respect for parents and elders impacts our future. And sometimes confusion can be a blessing and source of hope, because if we are left to finish what we intend, it may be too late. Next week, we will continue with the roots of Abraham.